Um, welcome back, everybody. I gave you a warning this morning when I spoke to you that this is a workshop, and this is where the work starts. So what I would like to do now is run through and let's analyze some of the messages we've heard and see if we can come up with some common threads and perhaps some recommendations for how things might be improved. Just as a bit of an introduction, the way I saw things this morning, there's no question that GAP is a major of major importance in not only gaining market access but in consumer trust. But there's a lot of complexity about it. There are many of them. We've heard about JAP Gap, Asia Gap, Asian Gap, Phil Gap, Ind Gap, Viet Gap, Local Gap, T Gap. It's a bit endless, and after a while, I think it makes your head spin a little bit. So you can imagine what growers are faced with. For example, with JAP Gap, 160 control points. I think ASEAN Gap, we heard there were 226 provisions. So the whole process itself is quite complex and very difficult for growers to understand. And then we heard from Peter Landon-Lane and Sean Chow that GAP is not the only measure or standard for success. That product quality and consumer traits, post-harvest standards for handling, all of the paraphernalia that goes with getting a crop offshore and into an export market is additional to GAP. So GAP is not really just the only thing you have to be concerned about. Asia Gap, for example, there are many other add-ons. Asia Gap has got the Global Food Safety initiative in that. Also, HACCP is involved in all of the processes once it comes off the farm. And different countries have different requirements. Some have local GAP. Some importing countries have different requirements. Some don't require GAP at all, but they have other documentation they need. Costs are a major factor, and in many cases, growers don't see a lack of benefit from it. And a lot of the uptake or the attitude to GAP depends, I think, on the production systems, where marketers with full control of the marketing chain, as we've seen with Zespri this morning and with, to some extent, with TG Global, they can completely control everything that goes through their hands. There are other growers, for example, corporate growers, have their own farms. They can control everything that's going on that farm. But then there are the exporting systems, and this is a majority, I think, throughout the Asian region, except in a couple of countries, where the exporters actually purchase from a wide range of small growers. And that's where it becomes a very, very difficult task, not only to maintain the quality, but to maintain the traceability and, in fact, the honesty around the whole system. So I'm going to throw the floor open now, so we can take questions or comments from the floor, and we can take them from the chat box. We have a question here or a comment from Arunta of Facebook. Thai Gap has been implementing for many years in Thailand by the Thai government, and yes, not global Gap. I don't understand why, as well as in other countries. If someone could translate that for Alex, please. I don't think he speaks.
丁先生，这个问题是给你的，就是说 Thai Gap 它已经是执行非常多年在泰国了，那并不是 Global GAP，他不了解为什么就只有 tight gap，然后没有再执行 global GAP。像其他的国家也都是一直有在做 global GAP， 那为什么在泰国特别的困难？
对，那基本上泰国本身来讲是
For Thailand, the Thai government has been promoting Thai gap instead of global gap. Global gap is really needed when you export fruit. That's why the government does not give much emphasis to it. Many exporters or traders trade fruit to Canada, European Union, so they will need a global gap. Okay. His answers will be translated consecutively.
非常多年了，那的确是在 global GAP 是最主要是国际市场的需求。
是。
Sorry, I should translate in English. Okay. So, yeah, it's been several years for Thai GAP already. It's just because in response to the international markets, so global GAP now become important in Thailand. 好的，换你，你要继续吗？
好的。那因为它是属于出口导向来促成这个认证，所以说在目前以泰国的水果出口的最大的市场，并不是在于欧洲，也不是在美洲，而是在亚洲地区，尤其是中国。
Yeah, because global GAP is exported oriented. And then the biggest market for Thailand is not in Europe. That's why that global GAP has not implemented widely in Thai yet.
所以说，当中国的市场它并没有要求采用 global GAP 的时候，对于这个产地的这个果农在做认证的部分上，它的那个动力不是那么的强烈。
Because the biggest markets is China, and then China did not ask for global GAP.
而当最近印尼才开始，在过去的3年才逐步的开始要求泰国这边的出口贸易商必须减负这个 global GAP， 所以才在泰国这边呢才形成了一个议题。
Yeah, it's only recent 3 years that they start to request the international markets that you have to have the document and certificate. That's how they start the global GAP.
但是对于一般其他的果农来讲 ，global GAP 还不是他们的一个选择，因为为什么它的第一个之前所谈到的认证成本太高，对它压力实在是太大了，因为。有的果农它的果园面积可能很小，所以说它的产出跟总金额或是说它的获利根本没有办法抵消这个认证的费用，所以他们就不会去选择。
So yeah, still the global GAP is not the option or choice for the smallholder farmers because the area of land. Okay, thank you. Okay, so
所以目前来讲，我们在印尼市场这边来讲，所需要的 global GAP 是由我们这些水果采购的那个包装厂来去帮他们做一个承担。但是这个承担来讲，就变成说一定会反映到我们的收购成本上面去，所以这对农民来讲是非常不利的一个情况。
Yeah, so now because the markets now is into Indonesia, they start to request the global GAP documents. Then the cost will have to share not only the cooperative but also the farmers. So maybe that's it. 就这样子哈。
Okay, thank you. So I'll just put Peter Landon Lane back on the spot before he departs. But Peter, could you tell us how important global gap is to your exports? Because I understand from the workshop we had last year on dragon fruit that some importers, even in Europe, don't require it. The US doesn't require global gap, at least for dragon fruit exports or imports. What's the situation, Peter? What controls what people are required to do? I think you're muted, Peter.
I'm sorry, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Actually, I needed more time to think of an answer. That's quite a tough question, Bob.
Just give us a
actually,
general opinion would be okay.
Yeah, I think even if there is no gap requirement, increasingly to be able to export fruit products to high value markets, it's necessary to have some kind of certification. And in many cases, it will be a private system, such as the British Retail Consortium, or they'll reference it to Global Gap or other equivalent or similar programs, assurance programs. So I don't think it's really a question of if you need to be certified or not. It's you have to just choose the certification which is most cost effective, and that's where something like Global Gap is the most universally accepted system. I have another comment to offer. I'm not an expert in GAP by any means, but I do know that in New Zealand, especially for our export-oriented fruit sectors, there is a very high uptake by farmers of GAP and other certification systems, over 90%. And most fruit products in New Zealand are exported to many, many countries around the world, as my colleague from Zespri, Mr. Joel, pointed out. One of the factors for the high uptake in New Zealand is because at the beginning, when New Zealand was developing its GAP system, it was able to come up with a system that met the full equivalence requirements of Global GAP. And so growers only need to if they registered and comply with New Zealand GAP, they automatically get a Global GAP compliance number. And so that makes it a very cost-efficient system. And it also means that by going for equivalence, the industries in New Zealand were able to design compliance systems which met the requirements of those international customers and bodies, but in a way that took into account the growing practices and the environment and the situation in New Zealand. We didn't have to try to follow, for example, a European way of growing fruit. We were able to come up with equivalent assurance. So that I think is perhaps something that many countries could consider to look at that equivalence as a solution.
I think that is along the lines of what we heard this morning from Mr. from Japan, that they're looking at. Sorry, where has he gone? There he is, Alta. Senji, that they are looking at for GAP equivalence as perhaps a slightly easier way for growers to conform to a basic health and safety standards. Would you like to comment on that, Senji?
Yes. There were several questions on the chat window that which GAP is more strict type of thing. But for instance, in the case of Japan, Asia GAP has more requirement than Japan GAP because of food risk management process based on HACCP standard, for example. So, but on the other hand, Japan GAP was also recognized as equivalent to Global GAP based in Europe in the past because of each, controlling point managed according to the standardized process. Local GAP, country level GAP can be equivalent, can be recognized as equivalent to Global GAP. So ideally, growers have Global GAP certification because that would have value to convince customers or consumers around the world, oh, this product is certified by the Global Gap standard. And that is the ideal case. But not all farmers can be certified by the Global Gap in terms of cost, in terms of management, environment, or situation at each farm. So what I would like to say is that Global Gap can be ideal, but farmers may have other options to comply with country level gap or other local standard. Otherwise, they might be able to develop own controlling standard to ensure that this dragon fruit is produced at a certain level of management and visibility and managed the proper way. So that's the message I wanted to share with you this morning in my presentation.
Thank you, Shinji. Just looking at the list of questions here. Yin, is it possible to aid those who are out of sources and smallholders who live under poverty by the policy, especially under pandemic? There might be many people are hard to get news online or through website. Is there any other way to solve this? Do we have someone who's happy to pick up on that question? I think it's probably a difficult one because once we get into the realm of smallholders, we know that their capacity for electronic communication is often low, although it's changing quite rapidly now as their children are coming through and learning how to use telephones and computers.
Okay, so I think I'll pick up the difficult one, but very shortly. From my prior experience before Zespri, I worked for Mission Technica in Nicaragua.
Oh, thanks, John.
Which is yes. Sorry. Yeah. So I think the main purpose of the mission is to assist the local people, growers and farmers to get the basic living standard from growing produce, and that's is part of the aid. And I think many global foundations and organizations have that function in a lot of different regions. And from my time in Nicaragua, that was the whole mission. And we use our expertise and technical experience from Taiwan. I think help those farmers and growers, especially on the rice and fresh fruit. So I think more of that standard application would be required from that kind of global aiding organization. And then I think next step will certainly to look at how the export opportunity in line with the GAP can be applied. So I think start from 0 to 1 is certainly a big step, and then from 1 to 2 is another one.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
We have another question here that says from Amayo Gikuruba. Sorry if I've mispronounced that. It's a very long name and there's possibly some initials. What about TQM in dragon fruit? Total quality management. Anybody like to make a comment about TQM in dragon fruit?
Shall I answer, sir? I am Dr. Karunakaran.
Please do. India. Thank you, Ganesh.
Sir, TQM, Total Quality Management System in dragon fruit, is yet to be adopted, yet to be developed actually, sir. TQ means nothing but it's the quality. Another one is focus on the consumers. Another one is strategy to improve the approach. Then continues to mutual system between the environment and also production system. So this TQM maybe if Vietnam, if they develop, they can give more answer this one, because we are in India, we have not developed a total quality management system for the dragon fruit. But three concepts: one is environmental approach, another one is sustainable in dragon fruit farming, and high value market from the through export of the dragon fruit. And the teamwork means what I want to say that our safety of the workers and safety for the food. This is the 5 in total quality management system. And strategy to approach the improvement of the existing system of the dragon fruit production. This the 5 concept can be adapted for the total quality management system. As per my knowledge, anyone can, maybe Vietnam they can answer, or Taiwan from they can answer this aspect. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a comment here coming up from Dr. Suzanne Chang. I would like to raise a point about how to assist small farmers to acquire GAP certification. Suzanne?
Thank you, Bob, for giving me the floor. I think from the presentation today, session 1, session 2, as well as from the video, I think the key concern is for smallholder farmers. How can we assist smallholder farmers to acquire the GAP certification? Because smallholder farmers have small production, especially in the Asia Pacific region. Average farming size, maybe farming household, less than 1 hectare. So it's not an economic scale. And if you want to expand, to spend a lot of money on certification, especially for those global GAP, etc., I think it's difficult for them. And they do not have the bargaining power on that. So I think from the successful examples from the presenters, we see that to encourage farmers to go into cluster type or cooperative or with a company or packing house who could develop the trade and could have standard procedures provided to contract farmers, and then to certify as a group. I mean, the company or the cooperative marketing board or the cluster type company, they can provide the SOP, standard procedures for production to marketing, and then handling the branding, and also for obtaining the certification, either it's a local GAP or global GAP. I think, but then there's difficulties. How can you really organize those farmers and then provide incentive for them to join us? We would like to learn from some of the speakers. What are the tips that you can obtain such a successful story? That's the first question. And then the second point about the GAP is that, as far as I know, in the past, the Taiwan Good Agricultural Practices which requires traceability. So a lot of requests on, you have to enter in all the details of your supply, your marketing, and in your inputs, and when do you spray, when did you fertilize, and everything. So there's a lot of tedious paperwork. And I don't know whether for the time being, because of the ICT technology is more advanced, are those certification agency already developed some tools that help farmers to have an easier job in making the records? So those are the 2 questions I would like to learn from.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'll just make a comment on that as well in terms of traceability. We might get some feedback from our major marketers on how they handle it. But certainly there was a study done last year or the year before in Vietnam looking at blockchain technology for traceability. And that was a very detailed study. And for those of you who want to read it, it's actually in the Dragon Fruit book that I mentioned this morning. and it just highlights a whole lot of problems that small farmers have, and the actual harvesting, collecting, processing, and marketing, and came to the conclusion that, like, the rigor and inflexibility of blockchain simply will not work in those environments. But the comment, I think, in the end was, this suggests the operation of a food traceability system should follow some principles such as transparency, cross-checkability, and trust, rather than follow a given technology like blockchain. So it's still a very open kind of a traceability system that we would probably be looking at for these smallholder situations. Can we just get a comment maybe from Sean or Peter on, yeah, I'll come to you in a moment, on your traceability systems?
Yes, thank you, Bob. I want to respond to the Director Zhang to mention about, I think that maybe one idea in Taiwan can be the reference to other participants. In my presentation, I just mentioned about in Taiwan, we have the one kind of the QR code system. For my personal opinion, I always think about if the farmer guarantee my product is safety, so the QR code is sometimes is the top standard, because I already put my name, open my name and over there. So I should be doing very well. But if not, very difficult to do that. If I'm the organization or a company, maybe just change your name. But for yourself, you are natural person for the QR code is put into yourself. So I think maybe it's a good way. But it still have some problem, because now the certification body, we need the other person to third party to certificate to review I do it very well or not. So in Taiwan, our government to encourage the farmer to join the QR code system. There is a different to TAP or TGAP. It just not necessary to follow the standard, but you have to publish your information, including your farm where location, including what you grow your crop, and also your personal contact, telephone or cell phone, something like that. So I think maybe it's a case can be the start. Because in Taiwan also same, like the global gap, maybe you need to spend 300,000 per year. So when in the smallholder farmer, they want to pay the money but don't know the market well, so very difficult to promote the farmer join the program. So I don't know. I just give a case for everybody. So this is my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wen Li. Sean, have you got a comment about, I know it's a very sophisticated operation, but the traceability systems used in your operation?
For Dr. Bob Fullerton. So two questions. I will start with traceability. So I think for years, Zespri has been recorded a lot of orchard management diaries, and it's one of the regular practice. We ask our growers to comply, and that's certainly a digital system on the cloud. So not yet to the blockchain capability, but certainly that's something that we are looking into in the future. So for data security perspective, that's even more secure than the current cloud-based storage. So from supply chain, from the orchards to the pack house and to the wolf, scanning, a lot of checkpoints, a lot of scannings. So all traceable, and all of the batches and the batches of the labors and also the batches of the product are traceable. And then on our packaging, if you happen to have a look of our transport package, there is a barcode, and that is for the supply chain traceability purpose, not to the consumer level as yet, but we have certainly a robust system to track every pack of the kiwi fruit. to our consumer end and also the customer end. So just probably an echo to Mr. Lee's points around TAP. So because I based in Taipei, Taiwan, so it's actually quite good that I also observed a TAP QR code in a lot of vegetables and fruit in Taiwan at the moment, but it's interestingly they are not open to the import fruit and vegetables. So, for example, if Zespri want to be part of the traceable system for consumers, the current TAP is only required for local growers and farmers, but not for the import fruit. So we are capable to do to the consumer level, but we are not yet to that level at the moment. Okay, and just on the other question around the small and scattered grower without resource, I observe a lot of questions to do with this, and from the morning to just now. So just want to add on one point that I didn't mention in my presentation in the morning, that one of the key benefit of Zespri GAP system and Zespri quality system is around about option 2. So Global GAP option 2 is the key that we managed to do the group certification through our 2,000, 3,000 growers. So as long as the orchard management system is one, and we have internal stringent program to monitor, and we got the group option 2 group certification, that can be one of the key benefit of having a small scale grower versus an option 1. So also from the GAP website, you can identify that they have a statistically saying that the option 1 producer size is 4 times bigger than option 2, meaning that option 2 is probably the way that the small growers can head into. But one of the key benefits from Zespri system is that we are here for a long time, and as you know, it's a power of the agribusiness that we have. We have been a lot of expertise around sales and marketing, so we are able to showcase small grower that we are able to bring you better value. So come with us and join our certification program, and this benefit has been running for years. But as a key benefit of option 2, for your reference. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sean. I see a lot of heads nodding here as well, so there's obviously some agreement around that particular point. And I think the point you've just raised about that you've been there for a long time, growers realise the value, and in fact they get value. And my experience is that in many cases growers don't see the value in it because they don't see an immediate lift or any great opportunity. And I think this is very true for a lot of small scale growers, that it's a lot of extra work, a lot of extra cost, and they don't see any immediate benefit from it.
And I think, Bob, if I may
sorry?
comment.
Sure.
Bob, it's Peter here. On that point, I agree, and Dr. Zhang, you mentioned this as well, that and referred to it, that the key is some kind of vertical coordination, and as Sean explained, there are ways to do that that's cost effective, using group certification, using even relatively inexpensive digital tools like handheld, use your mobile phone to update your spray diary. So that kind of technology is becoming more accessible even for small growers. But as Dr. Fullerton pointed out, in thinking about the system approach or the industry approach, it's important to make sure that the grower gets a good return on the investment of the extra cost or the extra labour that they had to spend to raise their quality and to provide good assurance for that. And that should come from them being able to sell their products for a higher price or in different markets. And as Sean pointed out, step by step, they should not try to go from nothing to be Zespri in the first year. But they can start to get better prices even just from sending their product maybe to a different city in their own country before they go international. And so if they see that return themselves, if they get better prices, then most farmers are good agricultural business people, even the small ones, and they understand that if they make more profit, then it's a good thing to do. And I would just like to say thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to join this really interesting workshop. I have another engagement, so I have to leave now, but thank you very much for inviting me, and I've really enjoyed hearing everything.
Thank you, Peter.
Very much.
I'll just draw your attention.
Bob, I can share some information to answer Dr. Chan's first question earlier.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, there is a group certification system in Japan, but the one requirement for group certification is that growers are connected, and for example, they have one same production site or packing system. So in other words, not only just combining different farmers, but they are consisting of one unit to share information, to share management office, and to share the manufacturing site, for example. So if that's the case, a group certification process can be done, and which save the cost for the certification. So if we think about small farmers, small growers of dragon fruit in Asia Pacific region, if they are working in the same organization or same unit, I think one option would be to apply group certification.
Thank you, Shinji. So, look, what have we got here? Just a question. I'll pose a question to Michelle. In terms of group certification, I mean, Philippines has got some very good systems in place for implementing GAP. Do you have group certification, and what do you think would be the benefit?
Yes, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon to all of us. Yes, currently in the country, as also in connection to the concern of Dr. Chang a while ago in smallhold farmers, in our country, we do group certification. So we have two options for certification. One is for individual farms, and the other is for group. So for group certification, included in that are corporate farms and cooperatives. So right now, I think late last year, we have started a paradigm shift for our Department of Agriculture. We started to have farm clusters because we see the problem and the concerns that a lot of our farmers are smallhold in reality, and no matter how hard they exert effort to go to markets and to market their products, their own produce, it's quite difficult for them to reach the general consumers. So what we did in our department is that right now we are continuously from the level of regional offices to provincial offices, and then to the down to the local government units, and even the very small units in as much as barangays in our municipalities and cities. We really reach out to our small farmers because we believe that through forming them into cooperatives, or as simple as farmers groups or farmers associations, our department can even assist them through marketing their produce as one body, as one certified body. So although we are still at the initial stages of clustering our farms, I think we are having great improvements in this, and we are really looking forward to perfecting this kind of system and we see that even not in the Philippines, this will also work to other Asia Pacific countries within the region to really help our smallhold farmers.
Thank you, Michelle. I agree completely with what you're saying there, that this does seem to be from the workshops we've had before and from today, that the best way forward for these numbers of small growers, I think in Vietnam like 50,000 growers of dragon fruit alone, most of them with less than a hectare of fruit, they have to be clustered in some way, and to make it just economical for them to get any benefit from it at all. So just moving on, we have if you've got your chat box open, Peter Landon Lane has just put on it a link to the New Zealand GAP website, which might be of interest to you because, as he's pointed out, the New Zealand GAP system is accepted by Global GAP as a Global GAP equivalent. So that might be something for all of you participants to have a look at, since we're worried about how GAP operates. There's a question here also that asks, is there any initiative or ongoing discussion to standardize all these GAPs? And there's a similar question about, I understand at present Global GAP has the most stringent requirement. Is that correct? So if we've got a GAP expert on the panel, someone could explain the difference between Global GAP in very few words, I hope, and some of the other GAPs, and also any initiative to standardize the GAPs. I'm not an expert. Sean, do you have a insight into the different kinds of GAPs?
Fortunately not. I will leave the door to others.
Wen Lei, would you?
How about Professor Zhang Yilu? Is he online?
Doesn't look like it.
Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah,
No.
I try to, but for me, I just know a little bit about the Taiwan, the GAP, Global GAP. We can say like this, just like in my presentation, in Taiwan, our system is setting the GAP standard for every crop. For the Global GAP, it may be the more bigger. It may be separate like the fruit crops and vegetable crops. So he is a little bit like the higher or top the standard to keep the regulation for the everything. Maybe it's a good more bigger the picture. So for the Global GAP, maybe he will consider about the biodiversity. Like the lab said, who work for you in the farm must be the owner must be the guarantee the lab work in your farm for the safety. And also you have some regulation for how to keep the chemical, even the dry chemical and the liquid chemical. So I think the more detail about this. For Taiwan, we just to tell the farmer some kind the pest or disease, you have to use the what kind of chemical. But for the Global GAP, because it have to be suitable for the many country, so he just like a friend over there, it's just very big. And also you have to follow your local countries law or regulation. So I think this is quite difficult. For Taiwan system, about agrochemical, we actually very strict regulation about the agrochemical. So I think this is a little bit different. But for Taiwan, we have to export our product to other countries. So now, because Global GAP is, we can say, more popular around the world, so we starting to change our regulation about the TGAP Plus to toward the direction to the global.
Yes, I know that
Maybe it's a
I
little
decided I'd have a look at Global Gap, so I Googled it, and I simply couldn't find my way into it. It's an extremely complex and huge system. I have here the ASEAN seems to be not wanting to look. The ASEAN GAP system, that's about, it's only about 30 or 40 pages, 26 pages. So that's being adopted throughout by a lot of ASEAN countries. But what we're finding is that they tend to water it down, because that even in this system here, and I think, Michelle, you're working towards the ASEAN GAP standards. There are several hundred items, although most of them actually duplicated across the different modules. A lot of them, a number of countries are looking really just at the first module on food safety, because that's the one that the markets mostly want. So the supermarkets really want the food safety module to be adhered to, because what they're looking for is safe food, more than worried about the environment or the fish in the pond and stuff and so on. What else have we got here? Someone asked the question about GAP in relation to processing. Is there any constraints about processed dragon fruit and where that comes from, or does that come under the HACCP kind of administration? Can someone comment on that, please? Nobody knows about processing? It certainly wouldn't come under GAP as it stands, I wouldn't think, but
I think
I really don't know.
I maybe contribute on this point. For processing, it's more in the what kind of processing you're talking about. For example, if it's immediately, for example, for fruit juice processing or cutting fresh vegetables, your factory must, your production line must meet the HACCP, because the hygiene is very important. So that's another part. It's different from the primary product. And maybe of the HACCP, maybe to some extent at the packing house, but then processing it's definitely require HACCP to meet the food safety standard in each individual country. Yeah.
Thank you, Suzanne. Okay, Wenli?
Yes. In Taiwan's system, processing we will use the CAS standard. So you can say it's different to TAP. So if you grow in the field, the fresh product will follow the TAP. But for processing in Taiwan, there will be another system for this CAS. So I think it's quite different, just like this. Thank you.
Another question here from Matt of Facebook, and Matt, I'm not sure our panel is in a position to answer this correctly, or in depth. If a product is already approved by GAP in the product and the package, and then, for example, some of it was tested and found it had a chemical residue over the minimum standard, who will be responsible? And can the consumer get any protection or compensation? Anybody happy to have a go at that one?
Dr. Fullerton?
Yeah, go. Yes?
Michelle here. So
Yes.
I think I have something to share about this question. So in our country, if a consumer claims that a product from a certified product did not somehow found to be non-compliant with the standards, this can be directly reported to the PhilGAP Secretariat based in our central office. And then the PhilGAP Secretariat can now proceed with an investigation to the farm where the produce came from. And then the process goes on until we go to get to respond with compliant. With the complainant. I'm sorry, with the complainant. That's how we do it in the Philippines.
Okay, thanks very much, Michelle. So, and I think this kind of raises some of the problems that we face with what we'd call a very fragmented system of production, a very fragmented system of collection, accumulation, packing, and marketing, so that there are points all along that chain where the product can become contaminated with non-certified product. They want to fill the truck up, so they just collect from another farm, which is actually not within the system. So this is where the traceability, I think, is a very, very big challenge with these numerous smallholders. And I think we probably have to think in terms of going back to something like the clusters of farms, which are certified as a group, and then with QR codes to be able to trace them through every step of the way.
Dr. Thornton, if I can
Sure.
also make the point.
Yep.
So from Zespri perspective, certainly that's part of the customer service function that we do in the market. That if any issue, safety-related, food safety-related issue happening in the market, Zespri would be the first-hand handler. And then certainly a lot of traceability will be linked back to the growers and pack house to identify the problem and what is the risk mitigation plan, etc. So the point I want to make is that the group certified program also provide a benefit that I think the group of the company can hear some issues when they happen and may identify a lot ahead of the issue actually happen. So it's the certification is not a one-off audit. So like we talked in the morning that even for our growers have the audit certification on an annual basis. But our grower communication team and extension team is actually spend every day connect with growers and organizations, understand the activities on the orchard management, so we can actually investigate immediately once we found any problem. So that's the benefit of the whole system, and that's the point I want to highlight.
Thanks, Sean. Just to start to sum up a little bit now, I think there's a general consensus that the only way that we can resolve some of the problems with GAP for hundreds of small farmers, numerous small farmers, is to implement some kind of a group cluster scheme. I think that's probably the first thing that needs to be done. But just before we go, we've got a few minutes left, a question in relation to farmer knowledge and farmer education. We keep hearing about not enough certifiers and not enough inspectors, but the real problem is that GAP is just that. It just says good agricultural practice, which is actually good agronomic practice, and all the things that go with it, whether it's how you mix your sprays, how you handle them, safety of your family, the safety of the animals on the farm, and the whole efficiency of the farming process in terms of soil conservation, nutrition, fertility, pests, diseases. So I'm just wondering if a lot of these problems with GAP certification or failing to get GAP are not really just failings in the actual agronomic systems which are in place, and could they be then improved by better agronomic servicing and education of farmers? Should we be starting at the bottom end and not the top end and bringing the farmers up? Would someone like to comment on that? We don't have many agriculturists. We've got 1, 2, 3 I can see here. Yes, Wenli.
Yes, Barbara. Yeah, me again. I just seen before the Taiwan starting to TCAP, we have the farmer. He followed the ISO 901. Okay, just 2 sentences. Do what I writing. Do what I write down. Write down what I do. So I see maybe for the GAP also send like this.
Right.
In the field, when we practice the agriculture, it's too many factors that you not sure what happened. You saw the result, but you don't know what caused that. So
Yes.
if we write down what we do, maybe they can clearly to know what happened. I think it's still very difficult because in the field, including the weather, other many factors to join together. But if we have some record, and if for the farmer or the farm want to go the long term to the future, maybe those documents can help they to check what happened. Yeah, so I think maybe this is the worry about the gap. And for the other, of course, for the consumers' need, they want to know the product who should respond. I think this is another issue. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
See, Ronald has popped up on the screen here. Is that I think that's the time for us to say goodbye. Is that correct, Ronald?
You actually, technically, you have 1 more minute or 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple more questions here, but I think if we can record those, we can probably get back to these, to the people who are asking the questions. So before with my last 30 seconds, I'd like to thank everybody on the panel for being as active as they have, and hope that all the other people who are joining us, either directly here or on Facebook, have got some ideas and some guidance from the expertise we've been talking about today. As I did this morning, I advise you, or at least suggest, join the Dragon Fruit Network. It's a wonderful network. It's got a huge reach now. And in terms of exchanging information or even just getting in touch with each other, there is a forum to do that now. So I will say goodbye at this stage, and thank you all very much for your participation, and enjoy everybody the rest of the sessions. Goodbye.